And I guess you said if it's kind of like been bothering you, right?
Yeah,
Uh, or kind of like what it
maybe it's
is.
bothering you. Maybe it's got you curious. Maybe you're like, I wonder if that's right. Maybe it's something that's going to affect you down the line. It can really be anything, right? It
Gotcha.
could really be
Okay.
anything. One person who's already got theirs written down, which is great. All right, we got another one. And nobody feel like we're not in any kind of a rush here, okay? This training is scheduled out for 2 hours. Sometimes we finish it, in like an hour and a half. Sometimes we finish it like right at the line. It really just depends on, how long you guys take to do all the parts of the exercise, and that's good enough for me, right? The buffer time is built in, so everybody has as much time as they need for each part of the exercise. All right. It's a little over half of us. We'll wait for a couple more before moving on. Good, good. All right. Very good. All right. So now that you guys have written down uh, that thing, right? I want you guys to consider a few of these questions. First one is, who said it? Who said it? Was this someone that you know? Was this someone in a position of authority or power? Does it matter who told you this thing? Then what did they say? What did they actually say? Did they give you facts or opinions? Did they provide all of the facts? Did they leave anything out? Where did they say it? Was this in public or was it in private? Did other people have a chance to respond or to provide an alternative account? When did they say it? Was this before, during, or after an important event? And is that timing important? Why did they say it? Did they explain the reasoning behind their opinion? Were they trying to make someone look good? Were they trying to make someone look bad? And then finally, how did they say it? Were they happy? Were they sad? Were they angry? Were they indifferent? Was this a written statement or was it a verbal statement? Could you fully understand everything that they said? So I want you guys to consider those questions. And if anything sort of popped out that was interesting, write it down, right? Anything that you found that was missing, notate that because you're going to need it as we continue. All right. Everybody feeling good about that one? Everybody there?
Yep.
Good. Good. Got a thumb. Got a yeah, got a thumb. All right, another thumb, couple more reacts. I'll take those. Okay, awesome. So, all right, so that's gonna be the problem that we're gonna be talking about. I'll explain exactly what I mean by problem in a second. Actually, I think it's on the next slide. So, yeah, here we go. Important terms. Before we proceed down our journey of critical thinking, we have to start with defining some simple logical terms, right? I've got 4 in front of us right here: problem, argument, valid, and sound. All right. And then over in the infographic, we also have like premise and conclusion. I'll touch on those a little bit later. It's a little bonus, right? So problem, argument, valid, and sound. These are the terms that we're going to use. I think that if you were to, broaden your horizons, go out after this course and look at more things about critical thinking, about the logical process, any of that kind of stuff, you would find that there are more terms. You think some of them could be used more precisely, but for our purposes today, this is what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to define each of these as we go, because some of these terms we use in sort of our everyday language, and we need to be clear about what they mean. So, starting with problem. A problem is a question raised for inquiry, consideration, or solution. In this context, the term problem is divorced from any bearing on moral or ethical weight. We can assign both positive and negative topics as problems to be solved. You guys right now, in picking out one thing that someone told you, one thing to analyze, you've already chosen your problem. So, argument. An argument is a statement crafted as a basis for discussion or reasoning. In the context of critical thinking, this term has no connection to the heated debates that the everyday word implies. Arguments are how we state our potential solutions to a problem or our lessons learned from a problem. And critical thinking is a process by which we continually refine our arguments to reach objective conclusions. An argument is said to be valid if and only if it takes a form that makes it impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to nevertheless be false. Otherwise, an argument is said to be invalid. In order to be valid, the argument's conclusion must be implied by its premises. Then finally, sound. An argument is sound if and only if it is both valid and all of its premises are actually true. Otherwise, an argument is considered to be unsound. So, as an example here, right? This one comes from like a more of a project management standpoint, right? Let's say that you are a team leader or project manager, and the ASA metric on your project is below 90%, right? It's supposed to be 90% or better, but it's below 90%. That's the problem that you need to solve. So you might form an argument, right, that says, hey, our ASA is below 90%. ASA drops below 90% when we're having staffing issues. So if we increase our staffing for the day, our ASA should rise above that 90% benchmark. You would then check it for validity and for soundness, right? Is that conclusion forced to be true by the premises, and are those premises actually true? Is it true that our ASA is below 90%, and is it true that it drops below 90% when we have staffing issues? Sounds pretty good to me, right? Now, quick note here about validity and soundness. Both of these things are important, right? We want our arguments to have a valid structure, and we want the premises to be true. But the order of operations in the critical thinking process is clear. We need to worry about validity first and soundness later, right? We have to make sure the argument is structured well before we're even concerned about whether or not it's true. And the reasons for this are pretty simple. In order to be sound, one of the requirements is that we check for validity anyway. So even if you want to think of it that way, like, hey, I'm checking for soundness, part of the process of checking for soundness is first checking for validity. To establish validity first, regardless of truth, is to examine the strength of the argument itself. And that is at the core of the entire critical thinking process, which is laid out thusly. Here is the critical thinking process in 3 big steps: draft arguments, determine validity, and determine soundness. If you want to structure your notes with some headers, these would be good ones. We're going to go through each of these 3 steps in detail. We're going to talk about them. We're going to do them. And hopefully you guys will come up with a pretty cool result by the end of this thing. So drafting arguments is where we actually craft a statement or solution to our problem, right? We ask basic questions whenever we're starting out to solve a problem. After all, forming a hypothesis or proposing an explanation based off of even limited information is a great starting point for any analysis. Even if you're just making a guess, make a guess. Worst thing it can be is wrong. And if it's wrong, you're going to find it out as you apply the critical thinking process. Then we determine validity. We revise our argument. We question any underlying assumptions. We examine any accepted beliefs. We look critically at processes that have always been done this way, because that's not great reasoning to keep doing it that way. We try to break our complex tasks and topics down into smaller parts in order to gain a better understanding of it. Then we develop conclusions based on data and present recommendations. After all, why even do critical thinking if you're not going to draw some really good conclusions from it? And then finally, we determine soundness. We determine if our statement is true. We collect all the information needed to prove our hypothesis, which could involve opening yourself up to greater and greater data sets, which might change your argument entirely. We evaluate all of the existing evidence, and we remain open always to revising that argument, revising our hypothesis. All right, so let's kick things off with drafting some arguments. Oftentimes, in our various roles, we are given a problem to be solved by our customers. Whether that's, on the help desk, a literal like end user customer, whether that's a supervisor or some other stakeholder for the team. Sometimes that problem is presented as an issue which needs correcting, or as a goal that needs to be met. But just because a problem has been given or stated to you does not mean that it's a full and adequate description. Sometimes there's information missing. Sometimes it's missing intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes we simply have an incomplete or incorrect understanding of the problem, and that's fine. No one is perfect. But that also means that we cannot expect perfectly complete problem statements to be provided for us. In order to create an argument that addresses the problem well, you must develop a firm understanding of the presented issue or goal. So the first thing that you do is you define the problem you're trying to solve. No matter what problem you're trying to solve, objectivity is key. Whether the goal is improvement or understanding, personal or professional, critical thinking is not well served by subjective insights alone. We have to form a healthy detachment from the problem in order to see it clearly. Even or especially when our actions, our decisions may have contributed to that problem. Even when trying to improve our emotional intelligence, an objective and observational attitude will provide clearer insights from which we can draft more effective solutions. And also try to make sure that your problem statement is concise. If it's too complex, maybe break it down into some smaller pieces, and then kind of examine it. Try to look at it and determine, like, is there really one part of this problem that's the core thing that I really need to address? If this is a personal or performance-based problem that you're working on, awesome. Thinking critically about your own performance and attempting to improve is crucial for personal and professional growth. Another term for this is self-reflection, but using critical thinking goes beyond mere hindsight. It's also about setting improvement goals informed by your thought processes. You can look at personal records like journals and bank statements and social media posts. You can look at professional records like emails and tickets and performance reviews. These things offer insights into past actions and behaviors. We can see how our actions have affected our current situation for good or for ill. We can also look at our previously set goals. Have these been achieved? Are they on track? Do they need to be reevaluated? If the problem you're working on is a business process or an efficiency problem, how does this issue align with or conflict with existing goals and metrics? How is this problem identified? Is the issue tracked within existing structures, or are new structures needed to gather the information on the issue? Identify any outlying factors which may be contributing to the problem, and remember the questions from our previous activity. Examine the information that's been provided for you. So you guys have already started this, right? This part of drafting your arguments. You've defined your problem as clearly as you know how. I've already asked you guys to think about those questions. I want you to take a look at your worksheet right now. Look at the issue that you wrote down. How does that problem hold up under scrutiny? How might you need to revise it to make it more effective? Are you missing any information that you can now add at this time? Are there parts of the problem that, now that you're looking at it, they seem a little bit extra? You don't really need those. Go ahead, make those revisions, but make note of what any of those missing pieces are, because you'll need them for later. All right, and I'll let you guys go ahead and make those edits, and I'll ask everybody to raise their hand once their edits are done, so I can keep track of everybody. Get a few people done. Excellent. All right. Very good, everybody. Waiting on maybe one or two more. That's the one. All right. I think we're going to call that good. Excellent. You guys are already pretty quick on this. You guys move pretty fast. For a little bit. We've only been training for like a half hour. You guys are on it. Okay. So, still working on drafting arguments, but are we sure that what we've drafted is an argument? Can we be certain? I've got an infographic here, right, that has two columns on it. We've got arguments and we've got non-arguments. I got a hand up. Was that a question?
No.
All right, cool.
Next,
All
yeah,
right,
I
so
have a
we've got
question.
arguments. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was a little bit late, and I hear you guys talking about a worksheet or something. Was there something I needed to download?
No, nothing to download. You do need essentially a place to use as a writing workspace.
Okay.
So the first activity that we did in this is I had the class think of something that someone once told you, right? This could be
Okay.
in a professional context, personal context. It could be something from social media, the news, whatever, right? Just something that kind of like lives in the back of your head. Maybe it's something you got a problem with, something that makes you curious, something that you don't think is quite right. Could be anything, right?
hmm
Describe it as clearly as you know how,
Okay.
and then kind of think of the who, what, where, when, and whys of that problem, right? Who said it?
Okay.
Where was it said? Why was it said? What was actually said? And how was it actually said? As in, like, was there an emotional response? Was it written, verbal, things like that?
Okay.
So, definitely going to want to go ahead and come up with a problem statement like that right now,
Okay. Got it.
because that's kind of like the through line of the rest of the. We're going to use that very same problem statement throughout the rest of the course.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so arguments on the left, non-arguments on the right. So we're going to go ahead and examine these. And we know that the ones on the left are arguments and the ones on the right are non-arguments, but why and how, right? What makes the one on the left an argument and the one on the right not an argument? Started with the first pair. So on the left, we've got it's raining. If it's raining, it's above freezing. If it's above freezing, you shouldn't go ice skating. Conversely, on the right, we have it's raining outside and it's melting all the ice and snow. So what makes the one on the left an argument and the one on the right not an argument? What do you guys think?
So the argument is okay. So for example, it's raining, so you can say, oh, if it's raining above freezing, it's probably a good idea not to go outside. And then you can argue, or maybe I still can, or give some other reasons. The one on the right is more like Well, it's not an argument. It's raining and it's melting all the ice and snow, so you can't go anyway. I think it's like a
Yeah,
more determined statement.
yeah. I think you're on the right track there. If the one on the right's not an argument, what is it? What would you call that?
Maybe just like a statement, or
A statement.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a statement, or you might call it a fact, right?
that too. Yeah.
An observation, right? Any of those would be an appropriate descriptor, but it's not an argument. You're completely correct. Yeah, it might, if you look at it as a statement, it could even be part of the argument on the left, right? But it's not an argument in and of itself because it has no stakes. It's not saying that you should or should not do something. It's saying that you ought or ought not do something. It's not saying something's a good idea or a bad idea. It's completely neutral. Look at the next pair. On the left, we've got chocolate cake contains sugar, and sugar is delicious. Therefore, chocolate cake is delicious. On the right side, we've got mixed flour and egg, milk, cocoa solids, butter, and sugar in a bowl. Then bake. Last, apply chocolate frosting. Why is that not an argument? What would we call that instead? What do you guys think?
That one would be instructions.
Instructions? I'll take that. Absolutely instructions. Yeah. In the culinary world, we call these kinds of instructions a recipe. Although, to be fair, not a very good recipe. Like, hand up. Anybody in this class, or anybody have any experience with technical writing? Anybody?
I mean, does the writing knowledge-based articles count?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And yes,
Would
If so,
this
then yeah.
pass muster for a KB article?
no, it would not.
No, yeah, I agree.
Might be missing a few steps, right?
Yeah.
Like
There's
when
so
did
many.
when did we put it in the baking dish? Are we supposed to leave it in the bowl when we bake it? What do we bake it on? How hot? How long? Terrible recipe.
How much?
Be
Yeah.
eating, you'll be eating melted plastic and raw cake batter. But yeah, it's a recipe. It's not saying that you should make a cake. It's not saying that you shouldn't make a cake. It's just telling you if you were so inclined to make a cake, this is how it's done. Cake
Oh.
that would poison you. But a
It's
cake.
like you still. It's funny because you still can. It could still be an argument because if because like as you said, the recipe is terrible. You can argue what would be a better recipe. So I mean, but if
Well-
it's just directions, then yeah.
You could make an argument for it being terrible, but
Yeah.
the statement itself doesn't say, this is terrible. The statement itself says, this is what you do. Here are the instructions.
That's true. This is the best way, or not a good way to do it. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. The one on the left, right, is trying to convince you of something. It's trying to convince you that chocolate cake is delicious by leaning on the fact that there's sugar in the cake. All right, last pair on the bottom, right? So argument is the science on vaccines consistently demonstrates pronounced safety and effectiveness. You should vaccinate. The non-argument says vaccines train our immune system to create proteins that fight diseases, just as would happen when we are exposed to a disease. We've got an argument on the left, a non-argument on the right. What will we call the one on the right? If that's not an argument, what is it?
Is that scientific fact?
Yeah, this is science fact or a medical fact, right? It's just there's another statement, right? Again, you could see this as part of the argument. If you were to move it over on the left, this could be part of that argument, but it is not an argument in itself, in and of itself. It just says this is what we know, right? And you can do with it what you will. The argument is trying to get you to do something, trying to convince you that you should vaccinate. Whether that's an effective argument or not, I'll leave up to you. But it is an argument. So what makes the ones on the left arguments and the ones on the right not an argument? If you haven't figured it out yet, I'll give you a hint. Look for if-thens, right? Any of you guys who are object-oriented programmers probably pick that up pretty quickly, right? Look for if-thens. So you can almost like insert them into each one of these examples, right? There's already a few if-thens kind of present in the first one. So we have it's raining. If it's raining, you can imagine the then it's above freezing. If it's above freezing, then you shouldn't go ice skating. Right? Chocolate cake contains sugar. Sugar is delicious. Therefore, chocolate cake is delicious. You can insert those if-thens there as well. If chocolate cake contains sugar and sugar is delicious, therefore, then chocolate cake is delicious. It's that back and forth where we're saying, if this is true, this other thing must be true. And if this is true, this other thing must be true. And you can see how they feed into each other. Evidence stacking one on top of the other. Whether or not they're true, who cares at this point? But the structure is there. All of them work together synergistically to support their final statement, right? The conclusion. You shouldn't go ice skating. Cake is delicious. You should vaccinate. You guys see how that works?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. So, let's draft some arguments, right? When we are drafting our arguments, we are creating solution to a problem, or we are making a statement of needs. An argument is crafted from premises, which in turn support the conclusion. Each one of those parts of those arguments is a premise, right? It's raining. That statement of fact, it is raining. That's a premise. If it is raining, it's above freezing. That's a premise. And those premises are assumptions that you make or facts that you claim, which give your conclusion weight. Arguments made in good faith contain premises that you actually believe to be true, or that you believe are likely to be true. So the problem statement that you guys have been refining is your first premise, right? Or depending on how you may have needed to split it up, it could be your first premise and your second premise, you know? Using the resources at your disposal, you are now going to create a statement or a series of statements which addresses your identified problem. The last line of your argument is your conclusion. It's what it all builds to. The outcome of the reasoning that you have presented. This can be a solution. This can be a lessons learned. This can be a statement of needs that you need to further analyze the problem. Now, when you're crafting these arguments, I will tell you, this is a little pro tip. It is oftentimes a little bit more useful to work from the outside in, right? Start with the premise that you have defined already, right? That problem statement. Maybe you think you already know what a good conclusion might be. Maybe you have an inkling already that you might need more stuff to figure this out, or that the solution to your problem is X, Y, and Z. Great, write that down too. And then fill in the middle. See if you can bridge that gap. Make the problem and the conclusion find each other. So give it a shot. Write an argument. Look at your problem. Try to think of a conclusion and some premises to support it. And let me know when you're done, because once you've done that, it's time to test our arguments for validity. And let me also turn off my laser pointer. That way I'm not accidentally doing laser pointer stuff all over the place. See? Like that. The more effective you'll be, the better you'll be able to predict future events, successes and failures. Okay, but let's move on to determining validity. This is the step where we determine if our arguments work. Right? Does the conclusion logically flow from the premises? An argument is said to be valid if that conclusion logically flows from the premises, right? If you assume that the premises are true, does that force the conclusion to be true? Whether or not the premises actually are true is not important yet. And I've got two examples to illustrate that. First one is premise 1, today is a day ending in Y. Premise number 2, sky is blue. Conclusion, birds have wings. Put that all together for you. Today is a day ending in Y, and the sky is blue. Therefore, birds have wings. Anybody, raise your hand if you think that that is a valid argument. All right, not seeing anybody. Raise your hand if you do not think that's a valid argument, if you think it's an invalid argument. All right. We got a few people with a hand raised. I'm going to call on somebody here. First person who raised their hand was Felicia. Is that how you pronounce your name, Felicia?
Hello, it's Felice actually.
Felice. Okay. So, Felice, why is this not a valid argument?
I'm sorry, I forgot the whole statement.
I'll give it to you again. Today is a day ending in Y, and the sky is blue, so birds have wings. Why is that not a valid argument?
I think the sky is blue is irrelevant to the birds having wings. Despite the birds having wings, the skies can not be blue, right? It can be red or pink or whatsoever. So it's not
Mhm.
relevant with the bird. That's what I thought so.
Yeah, yeah. The sky, the color of the sky has nothing to do with birds having wings. The letter that the day ends with has nothing to do with birds having wings. None of these premises feed the conclusion, so it is not valid, even though each of those individual statements can all be true, right? We know that birds have wings. We know that every day ends in the letter Y, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They all end in the letter Y. Sky is usually blue. Doesn't matter. They don't flow. Conclusions not supported. Let's try the other one. Okay. Premise number one. Every city in the state of Michigan is a capital city. Premise number two. Detroit is a city in the state of Michigan. Conclusion, Detroit is a capital city. I'll put it all together for you so it flows, right? Every city in the state of Michigan is capital city, and Detroit is a city in the state of Michigan. So Detroit is a capital city. Can I get a hand raise if anybody thinks that that is a valid argument? Right? Got a couple of votes for valid. Can I get a hand raise if anybody thinks that this is an invalid argument? All right. Let's start with our one vote for invalid first. Go ahead. Why is this an invalid argument? You're muted.
Oh, okay. I was talking to myself. All right. So just to make sure I was understanding,
hmm
you said that every
Every
capital or
every city in the state of Michigan is a capital city. Detroit
okay,
is a city in the state of Michigan, therefore Detroit is a capital city.
okay, got it. So, but or maybe okay, because if it's well, I was gonna say it's not true, therefore it's an invalid argument. Um,
Hmm.
if,
But
if
what
I'm
has
understanding you correctly,
validity
yeah.
to do with truth? You've fallen into my trap.
Wait.
We don't care if any of these statements are true. Doesn't matter if they're true. What matters is if the conclusion is supported by the premises.
Um.
Uh, let's see. John, you
Okay.
raised your hand first for this being a valid argument. What makes you say it's valid?
So the initial statement is that all cities are capital cities. So
Mhm.
therefore, any city that's located in Michigan, based on this premise, would be a capital city. So that makes it valid.
Correct. Necessarily. Doesn't matter. Like whether no matter what you know about the state of Michigan, if you might not know anything about the state of Michigan, but if you know anything about states or countries or territories, you know probably how capital cities work. And you know that not every single city in any given state, territory, country, whatever, can be a capital city. Doesn't matter. For the purposes of this argument, we're just looking to see if the conclusion is supported by its premises. And in this case, they are. Those two premises force the conclusion to be true.
Correct.
Okay. I see what you're putting down now. Okay. 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 Okay.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Very, very good. So here are steps in determining validity. And really what this boils down to is taking that argument that you so lovingly crafted and trying to poke holes in it. As many holes as you can. Pop, 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 pop. And that might seem counterintuitive to try to poke holes in your own argument. But if you don't poke holes in your argument, guess what? Someone else is gonna. And it's gonna be in a time and a place that you have no control over. The more weak spots that you find, the better you'll be able to shore up your argument in a tight spot. Or you might figure out that this is not a great argument to support, and you might throw it out altogether. And that's also something good to know. Because, I mean, hey, you don't want to put all of your backing behind a bad argument, do you? So, for solutions, we want to think, does the plan of action logically address the perceived problem? Does the desired result logically flow from that plan of action? Are there any scenarios where that plan is executed, but the results are not achieved? For lessons learned, are the lessons learned fully explained by the premises? Are there any other explanations which could have produced those results? Are there any unaddressed gaps in the premises that you have identified? Now, if you do find any gaps in your argument, or if you find that your conclusion isn't as well supported as you believed, then guess what? It's time to revise your argument. Can you think of any additional premises that would fill those gaps? Are these things that you can safely assume in the moment? Or would they require you to gather additional information or take some time for additional consideration? Can you think of a different course of action which would achieve the results that you desire? And does that plan seem viable? If you found that there is not enough information to support your conclusion, then now it's time where you determine what information is needed and gather it. Oftentimes, finding gaps in your arguments can feel kind of daunting, like you've hit a wall. But that's not true. This is an important step in the rational decision-making process, and it should be seen as progress. Whether you're an agent working with a customer or executive making a business proposal, an honest inventory of your needs to continue the course of action is a welcome step in the right direction for your stakeholders. In your personal life, these gaps can guide you towards a greater self-awareness, a more fulfilling journey. Critical thinking isn't just about finding good arguments. It is just as much, or maybe even more, about finding and eliminating bad arguments. So, go ahead, take a look at your argument. Is it valid? Does it flow? Are there any gaps that need to be addressed? Go ahead and make any revisions that you need to. And give me a hand raise when you're done. to project level or company-wide issues, strong critical thinking skills are a major advantage. And within those situations, responders can oftentimes feel that they're not fully in control of the situation, which can in turn lead to errors in judgment and errors in decision making. This degrades their ability to recognize patterns and form in the situation facing them. And this leads people to oversimplifying complex situations and problems. And associated with that oversimplification is a form of stereotyping, which is the adoption of oversimplified rules to explain complexity when it challenges our ability to influence what is happening around us and to us. And I'm sure we can all think of an event or moment in our careers or in our personal lives where we felt we did not have control over an issue, right? Think about that. Think about how you responded in that moment. In stressful, high risk, or time constrained situations, oftentimes we rely on heuristics. A heuristic, if you didn't know, is a rule of thumb, essentially, right? These were defined by Stephen Novella in his book, Your Deceptive Mind. And he calls it a cognitive rule of thumb or a mental shortcut that we subconsciously make that may be true much of the time, but is not logically valid. Heuristics are our brain's go-to option for making intuitive decisions, but they can often lead to unexpected or unwanted results. And that doesn't mean that heuristics are bad. They're not in any way. And they're unavoidable in many cases, especially where the pressure for a response is high. But critical thinking offers a path towards better intuitive decision making by strengthening pattern recognition skills, which in turn leads to better situational awareness. So how do we actually improve our crisis management skills with critical thinking? The Global Alliance for Human Crisis recommends these 5 steps in these colored blocks on the screen, right? We have identify, record, categorize, test, and challenge. So identify all of the assumptions underpinning your analysis and choice, record and share them, categorize them in terms of their load-bearing significance, test them where possible, and then challenge them by exploring their contrary implications, making contrary assumptions, right? Literally, assume the inverse or opposite of what you were assuming initially. You'd be surprised how far that will get you in managing a crisis, right? It's not just about making the arguments, but it's about poking the holes in those arguments. And the arguments that you make here may be thin, right? Based off of very little information, just on the information that you have. But as long as you are consistently testing them for validity, consistently trying to poke holes in those arguments, you're going to come away with a lot of great conclusions, or at least you're going to eliminate a lot of poor solutions. So these 5 steps are fantastic. They're good in the moment. They're absolutely phenomenal post hoc, right after the crisis is passed, where you can take a look back and examine what you did. And that sort of exercise is very useful as well, because when you look back and examine how you have addressed a crisis in the past, what kind of assumptions that you made, whether those were good assumptions or bad ones, that's going to increase your situational awareness. It's going to really increase your ability to manage that same kind of crisis in the future, and crises that are very similar to it. Okay. So that's how we do crisis management. Let's move on to assessing soundness. This is the critical last step before accepting your argument internally or sending your argument's findings to any stakeholders. When you are assessing soundness, it is possible that you might find that your argument has very little weight on reality, right? That is to say, you might find that you were wrong. After all, an argument does not need to be true to be valid, but it does need to be true in order to be sound. This can be disheartening. This can be depressing. This can be upsetting. But it is not a failure of your thought or your exercising critical thinking. An argument must stand on its own. And if it can't, then you have still learned something valuable. After all, why put energy and focus into work founded on poor principles? All that would have accomplished is wasting time and wasting resources on fruitless endeavors. When you are assessing the soundness of your arguments, you're basically just asking, are all of your premises true? Right? This is when we worry about fact checking. This is when we check for confirmation. If your argument depends on information that you assume is true, but you don't know for a fact, how can you find out? If one of your premises turns out to be false, how does that affect your conclusion? You may need to revise your argument again. Is your plan viable? Are your action items achievable? What barriers do you foresee in the execution of your plan, and what steps can you take to mitigate those barriers? How will you know when your plan has succeeded? Implement SMART goals whenever possible to define your success conditions. And if you don't know what a SMART goal is, congratulations, you now have a homework assignment. Go look up SMART goals. They will help you everywhere. Once you have determined that your argument is sound, your conclusion is ready to be presented to the world, whether that is by sharing it with your team, with your leaders, with other stakeholders, or if it's by incorporating these lessons into your personal journey of self-improvement. Regardless of the outcome, you can act with confidence, knowing that your idea has been well-reasoned and well-examined. All right, bringing it all together. So, at the very beginning of the training, we asked you to recall an issue that you recently received and write it down. We then took you through the steps, the process of critical thinking, writing and revising as we went, breaking things down into smaller pieces, checking to see that everything flowed well, that things were actually true, right? What insights did you glean? What questions still need answering? What are your next steps? Write them down. Write them down right now. That way you know what you need to do when this class is over, as it will be very shortly. All right. So here on this slide, we've got some tips that we can use to increase our critical thinking skills every single day. These are exercises, I believe there's going to be 6 on the screen, that I have a lot of confidence in, that I love doing. I actually think some of these are pretty fun. You know, that's a real logic nerd thing to say, but hey, I'm a logic nerd. What can you do? But doing these things, finding like a couple of these that you can do every day really will pay off in big dividends with your critical thinking skills. First one is think about a topic or issue in an objective and critical way. When you are confronted with a new topic or concept, or this also works if you're revisiting a familiar topic or concept, try to define your arguments about that topic. Are those arguments valid? Are they sound? Is there any information that you assume to be true but don't know for a fact? Exercise number 2. Identify the different arguments there are in relation to a particular issue. There may be more than one valid way of crafting an argument. Try to think of the various arguments surrounding a topic until you can't think of any more. No one is perfect, and we won't be able to truly conceive of every possible way that we can argue an issue, right? But don't let that stop you. It's not about trying to think of literally everything. It's about trying to think of as many as you can. It's about stretching the boundaries of your skills. Tip number 3, or exercise number 3, evaluate a point of view to determine how strong or valid it is. For this one, I'm going to recommend that you find an argument that you don't buy into, right? Something that you don't agree with, that you don't like, something that feels bad, right? This could be some, I don't know, some stupid political thing that you heard on the radio, right? This could be some ignorant person shouting at you down the street. Who knows, right? Find something that you don't believe in, then take yourself out of the equation and try to examine the argument objectively. Is it valid? Is it sound? What gaps do you find? This is also a great way to gain new perspectives and new understanding. Doing this may not change your mind, right? But it might help you to understand how other people are thinking about this. Exercise number 4, recognize any weaknesses or negative points that there are in the evidence for an argument, especially weaknesses that you recognize immediately. Make your own arguments about why that piece of information is weak, and then analyze that argument. Does it stand? The more you recognize weakness in the arguments around you, the more you can recognize your own. And bonus, right? If you're arguing that a piece of evidence is weak, and then you look at your own argument for the weakness of that evidence and it doesn't stand up, now you've learned something else about your own assumptions, your own biases. Exercise number 5, notice what implications there might be behind a statement or argument. An implication is often an unspoken premise in an argument and can be an indicator of bias. Examine the implication and see how it fits into the argument. Does that argument still flow from all of those premises? How does that implication affect the conclusion? When you're checking for soundness, is the implied premise also true? And then exercise number 6, provide structured reasoning and support for an argument that we wish to make. Be prepared to offer your reasoning behind any decision-making in a professional setting. Not only is this crucial in securing the trust of your colleagues and stakeholders, but it also keeps you prepared for anything that comes your way. This doesn't mean that you need structure for every single statement you'll ever make, but be prepared to move through the motions of critical thinking in real time to defend your argument if needed. And if you find that your argument falls apart under examination, concede the point with grace. Any questions about any of these 6 exercises? Everybody feeling good? Feeling great? Feeling bored out your mind?
Yep, all good.
All right, all
But-
right.
It just so have the come out as you were saying that last part, but yeah.
No worries, no worries. Okay.
The more insights in short time.
So the process of critical thinking can seem daunting when it's broken down into discrete steps. but it's really much simpler in practice. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you already do, probably unintentionally a lot of the times, and probably inconsistently. But once you've got the formalized structure down, the individual steps begin to blend in to your thought patterns. The more you practice it, the smoother and easier process it becomes. When you're first doing this intentionally out in the world, right? When you're first employing these skills, sometimes it can
When you
feel like
first
you are
employing these
talking or
skills,
thinking in circles.
you maybe feel that
Yeah,
you are talking and thinking in circles.
but this is not necessarily the case. Critical thinking is a process, and while you seem to be going around and around, you are actually climbing upward and gaining better insight with each step. All right, and that's it. That's critical thinking. I hope everybody had a great time. There is a feedback link in the invite for this training. That is a post-training feedback link that is going to give you an opportunity to sort of like give feedback on the training, give feedback on my delivery of the training. All of your feedback is completely anonymous. I will not know what anybody says. Just it'll help to make this course better in the future. Positive feedback is great. It makes me feel nice and fuzzy and makes me feel like I'm doing a great job. Negative feedback is useful. It's super useful because it gives me things that I can fix. So if you would be so very kind, I would urge you to take that link to actually fill out that form and just bully me relentlessly. Just really just destroy me. Just make me cry. Send me to therapy so that I have a ton of things to fix and I can make this training better for everybody who takes it in the future. And I would also encourage you to take more professional development courses with me, with Carlos, with Lala. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day and rest of their week.
Hey, real quick before you go, do we have
Yeah.
access to this slide deck?
No, you do not have access to this slide deck, unfortunately. Okay. But if you have any questions or if you want any information, feel free to message me outside of this and I will provide it for you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.